Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. Some of my old childhood pals and I convened at the local bar to organize our yearly men's club party activities. Johan Nyberg arrived late, ran in, and exclaimed, "Can you guess what I heard at the golf club only a few minutes ago?" Nobody could, so he added, "That super holy Victor Sandal was there, obviously a little boozed, sitting with two cohorts and bragging in a loud voice. I've hired a new secretary today, a very sexy married chick who accepted the fact that an extra raise in her new salary, higher than at her current job, means a monthly sex session with me. That extra is peanuts for me and saves me a lot of wasted time seducing a new one. Such a small salary agreement makes them easy to train for all kinds of kinky sex at my demand." Patrick had boasted. When one of the companions argued that a quickie once a month could hardly be a deal to talk about, Patrick resumed his boasting. "They always think it will only be that quickie once a month. At least a newly hired married one will think so. Then she gets a rough first introduction to my real rules and learns to obey about when and how I want to use her. Both of you will get a good taste of that when I have her ready for it." He went on, "We must decide that it is high time to give that a holy Sandal a lesson, that he is not any emperor with unlimited right to screw married women, at least not here in our small Nordic town." After considerable deliberation, we all decided to go along with the plan, not just because of Patrick's obvious exploitation of someone motivated by self-interest for his own financial advantage, but also because we despised Victor Sandal for a variety of other reasons. For starters, we are locals, but he is not. He arrived to our town, charmed, and married an affluent divorcee who had been betrothed to a well-known local guy. However, we couldn't dispute that he is a brilliant businessman who, thanks to his strict management approach, has greatly developed his wife's businesses into flourishing successes. Victor Sandal and his wife are now quite wealthy and seem to be in an open marriage, since Patrick's encounters with married women are not among our town's best-kept secrets. His wife isn't hiding the true purpose for her monthly journey to an advanced art study circle in Florence. The guys in our town had a nice chuckle when Patrick's wife returned home after a vacation to Florence with an STD as a memento. She shared it with Patrick, who shared it with his married secretary, who then shared it with her husband. The husband had a shotgun and took action against Patrick as soon as he discovered who had given his wife the STD. But Patrick spotted him approaching with the shotgun and fled. He was a strong runner, and anxiety accelerated his pace. That is why he was so far away when the spouse shot both barrels. Only a couple lead bullets struck the rushing Patrick. When that tale spread across town, most of us guys laughed, but a few local ladies felt terrible for poor Patrick, and even he was startled at how many of them sought to console him after the shooting. Several of them wanted to visit him as soon as his STD was treated. Patrick's highly successful womanizing with married women made him despised, and another issue that turned us locals against Patrick was that his lucrative firms had never provided any sponsorship money to our local football team, but plenty to the club in his former city. My name is Marcus Lundquist, and I'm a 35-year-old engineer at a public district heating plant outside of town. It is where we burn all of the local waste in massive burners to warm up the residences in the town center. I'm married to Sophia, a 36-year-old tall, thin, and stunning true blonde. We have two wonderful children, Felix, 11 years old, and Nora, 9 years old. We should have been a happy family, at least in my perspective. However, Sophia and I are prone to quarrel about little topics these days. Even our once great sex life has deteriorated to a pathetic state. I've made several attempts to improve it, but have been unsuccessful. I've proposed romantic weekends and trips to exotic destinations, both with and without our children, but she's not interested. I hate to mention that Sophia's closest friend and many of her old friends are divorced, which is the root cause of our marital problems. So are the majority of her co-workers. Their constant boasting about romantic dates and fantastic one-night encounters with new guys has caused Sophia to covet her friends' free lifestyle and fantasize about brighter pastures beyond the fence. Of course, Sophia's divorced acquaintances constantly fail to tell her about their lonely vacations and other occasions when they miss their families. The fact is that Sophia's free pals may envy her successful marriage much more than Sophia does. However, they keep their difficulties hidden while gloating about how happy they are with their new lifestyle. I understand Sophia's adoration and jealousy for her free buddies, and it'll allow her some time to go back to being a loving wife. However, it cannot last indefinitely. Nothing indicates that she is cheating on me since she has never gone on her own for an extended period of time, which may happen. There will be no unusual overtime, late evening visits to old or new pals, or late ladies' evenings at solitary pubs. When I arrived home, I found a very delighted Sophia standing in the kitchen, baking mine and the kids' favorite cake. Why? I questioned her. Are we celebrating something? She responded with a bright grin. Yes, we are indeed. Just wait till we are all together, and I'll tell you the good news. I waited, and when the entire family was gathered, a pleased Sophia informed us, I've got a new job with a fair increase in salary. Finally, it'll be paid for my qualifications. She had been working at a tiny local office of a large international bank, and there were reports that all small offices would be closed owing to the rising danger of bank robberies. I welcomed her with congratulations. And where is that lucky company that was clever enough to hire a great, well-qualified employee like you? The main office of the Sandal Group, she said. I got a piece of cake in my windpipe and started coughing profusely. Sophia inquired, something wrong? With a worried expression. What can I say? I knew that no matter what I said, she would not alter her view until I could show her actual proof. For the time being, I couldn't. I had just heard stories, and it would never be a good excuse for her to pass up that new, higher-paying job. Cake in the windpipe, I replied. I went on. Do you know that this Victor Sandal is acting like a real Aholi against his employees, especially his female employees? Nobody who knows him doubts that his bragging about screwing almost all the best-looking ones is true. Do you have any written and signed contract about the salary and against all kinds of sexual harassment? If not, your new salary will only be a dream in the sky until you are his toy for his joy. I kept going. You ought to know that bragging about his seductions is a great pleasure for this Patrick, and it is not any disadvantage for him if he lets me know what he has done with you. Please understand that when it happens, this marriage will be history. Of course, I will have a contract. Do you really regard me as a 304 or an idiot? She was asking. I was about to add yes, both an idiot and a 304, but instead I replied simply, May I see your contract? Yes, of course, as soon as I get my copy by mail. Even Sophia had the impression that informing me about Victor Sandal had transformed her joyous celebration into a very cold one. Hopefully, she started to consider the possible negative implications of her prospective monthly intercourse with Victor Sandal. The following day, I phoned my closest friends and informed them about Sophia's folly, and they agreed to assist me rescue her from Victor Sandal. My first step was slipping out of work and heading home to check the mail. A large delivery came the next day. It was Friday. I opened it and saw a valid contract, as well as some high-quality written material on Sandal Group firms. But then there was a page from a women magazine with two models wearing provocative lingerie, as well as a Sandal Group request form for a local ladies' fashion business. A handwritten note was attached, which stated, Dear Sophia, use the form and get one of each. OJ. I had my proof, and my pals informed me that there was a plot to ruin Patrick, but it was preferable if I didn't know anything. Of course, I could face Sophia right now, but admitting that I had viewed her email would be a huge issue for me. The first action against Victor Sandal occurred on Monday evening. He proudly owns the only Maserati in our town. That's why he parked it prominently in his driveway to torment everyone who envied him. Of course, it was guarded by cameras with alarm sensors and linked directly to the premier security firm. Around 1 a.m., a guy disguised as an English Champions League football player, wearing a match outfit with a big star's name in large letters on his back, entered the driveway and poured several liters of paint-removing liquid over the vehicle. When the security firm came 8 minutes later, the player had already moved away. The first police patrol vehicle arrived around 2 hours later. The only thing they could do was attempt to soothe an enraged Victor Sandal. On Monday morning, Patrick called every police chief he could locate to request a technician who would be compelled to work extra and photograph his automobile. On Tuesday morning, the Maserati investigation was assigned to a criminal inspector named Eric Blomqvist. He was dubbed T-Prick Blomqvist or TP by his coworkers. He received the moniker while on a date with a gorgeous female English police officer during an international conference on football hooligans. Blomqvist spells his name with 2 dots above the letter O, which is referred to as prick in Swedish. What seemed quite English to him really meant something entirely different in England. That created considerable laughter when he introduced himself to her as, My name is Blomqvist. Blomqvist with 2 pricks. Shed responded, Oh really? That's amazing. I don't want to miss that and have to see it. Before everyone around them laughed. However, T.P. Blomqvist is a decent person who had spent the night with his attractive English female colleague, but the following morning at breakfast, she had playfully complained to Blomqvist's colleagues that he was a bloody liar because he had only one prick. His mood deteriorated throughout the morning. The fundamental cause for TP had been put in charge of the local football hooligan issue, which was practically non-existent in our town. Now, the wrecked Maserati had taken him away from a bank robbery investigation, where he had been a pain in the buttocks for his colleagues. TP considered it as a stroke of luck that his English female colleague worked in the city where the Ferrari destroyer had come from. He was a man of action, so he sent some information and a photo to her. The English officers laughed at the photo, and then one of them had a brilliant idea. They sold the whole narrative and photo to one of the tabloid publications. The next day, the photo was top news on the front page, with a title reading Champions League player in police investigation about damaged Maserati. It was a wonderful story for the English newspaper, and it became even better when the player's wife revealed that her husband was not home the night the Maserati was wrecked. The police then intervened, forcing the player to admit that he had spent the night with his lover. Even that information was sold to a publication. Happy days for the English newspaper, when a simple page filler became a best-selling scandal story. Even the football player's mistress was grinning all the way to the bank after selling her tale to the most expensive tabloid newspaper. The victors were clearly delighted, while the losers were upset. The Champions League player, who was kicked out of his house and is facing a very costly, embarrassing, public divorce, threatened to kill his blasted Scandinavian doppelganger who had gotten him into this problem. Victor Sandal and his wife were upset about the costly damage to their Maserati, as well as reports in local tabloids that he was a womanizer who favored married victims. My wife Sophia was unhappy with my requests to miss her new work, and she continued to refuse to listen to me. It was possibly because she saw monthly sex with her attractive employer as a huge favor rather than a humiliating obligation. I wasn't pleased that she was still not listening to my warnings about Victor Sandal and what would happen if she went too far with him, as many others did before her. My buddy said they didn't know anything about the Maserati assault since they weren't participating. Now I realize that there have to be many more significant reasons for someone to assault Patrick's automobile than my 304 wife's predicted adultery. Something I didn't realize had prompted him or them to prepare and execute that extremely sophisticated assault. However, I had no reason to complain about the coincidence since the wrecked Maserati had no link to my wife. My pals intended to continue our vengeance against Victor Sandal, and I had no reservations when they asked for little participation from me. I handed them some images of Sophia. They informed me that the next stage would be to have some brilliant person, who I did not know, create 150 folders to be addressed to prominent individuals in our community as well as the Sandal Group's most important clients. I also received a folder in my employment email. It was really professionally done, with 4 pages in A5 format and color print on high-quality paper. The main page featured Sandal Group's logo and a happy Patrick carrying a sign that said, "Welcome." Page 3 included a formal invitation to be an honorary guest at a dinner, as well as details about a fantastic new innovation. The back page featured information on the Sandal Group, but page 2 was the most appealing to readers. It was the same ad for seductive underwear that Sophia had received from Patrick, but the models' faces were substituted with Sophia's face, and the words read during the dinner, "My secretary will show you the latest fashion in underwear for a hot, sexy secretary." At the bottom of the page, there was a framed box with a number and words that read the winner of this lottery wins a private strip in 1 hour prime time with the secretary in a room at Grand Hotel directly after the dinner. My pals had gone to great lengths to get Victor Sandal involved in a severe sex scandal, but they never informed me who did what. Patrick's business relationships would most likely suffer as a result, but I don't believe any of his married 304s would leave. Now, I did do all I could to persuade Sophia to avoid her new work. I anticipated a tremendous hallelujah when I encountered Sophia later that day when the letter arrived. I took the day off, and after a few hours at home, with Sophia's new corporate underwear on the kitchen table and a Sandal Group folder, I started to wait. I was certain that Sophia's supervisor at the bank would show Sophia any folders that arrived in the mail. The only issue was whether Sophia would go directly to Patrick or, as I suspected, return home first to retrieve the underwear. When she denied her involvement in the folder, She provided significant evidence against herself. I was correct. Sophia came into the home just after 11 a.m., running directly to the bedroom without spotting me seated in the kitchen. I heard her cry in anguish as she looked for the new sexy underwear. Finally, she gave up her quest and entered the kitchen. When she spotted me, she shouted, "Marcus, why are you at home?" "For the same reason you are. I was curious to see the working clothes for your new job as Company 304 at Sandal Group," I remarked, handing her the bag containing the undergarments. Then I proceeded in a loud voice. "How could that slimy jerk Victor Sandal manipulate my wife into getting involved with him? Is he blackmailing you or something? Why on earth are you tangled up in this mess? Didn't I warn you about that scheming creep?" Sophia wept out for a time before weeping. "Please let me explain. Everything is a big mistake, and it is not what you think. Don't disgust me with that nonsense. You know exactly what Victor Sandal expects from you, and it must be part of your arrangement with him. Otherwise, your picture wouldn't have been on his dinner invitation. Who provided those ridiculous outfits?" I remarked, tossing the bag at her. Sophia answered, "It was a gift, nothing else. I think it was because Patrick owns some part of that underwear shop, and I have never agreed to any stripping or meeting anybody at a hotel room during the dinner. In fact, I had never heard a word about any dinner. Please, Marcus, you must believe me. I don't. And that's the reason why we are going to see Patrick right now. He'll give you a fair choice: skip that job, or it will skip this marriage." I told her. She did not respond, but accompanied me to Sandal Group's main office. But it was a futile endeavor since 2 security officers outside the main gate informed us that Victor Sandal was overseas and refused to allow us in after checking my ID. We made another effort at Victor Sandal's house, but 2 security guards stood outside the door and gave us the same information as those at the office. There wasn't much to do about Patrick that day. I begged her to leave that job once again when I got home. To my astonishment, she stopped saying yes, of course, and instead said she would think about it. My response to it is not printable. Sophia vowed to make every effort to call Patrick the next day after some additional discussion. The next day, Sandal Group launched a large advertising effort in both local and national publications, claiming that they had nothing to do with the controversy files. The major impact seemed to be that the advertisement sparked great interest in the folder, which was now even accessible on the internet. But it was Patrick who had phoned Sophia at work and scheduled a meeting with her for the following Tuesday, when he would be back in town. When I inquired whether she had resigned her job, she claimed she had tried, and Patrick had promised it would be on the schedule for Tuesday. Before leaving for work on Tuesday morning, I informed Sophia that this day would be one of the most crucial in her life. She might choose to stay a married lady with a family or join her divorced friends by accepting that position and becoming a corporate 304 for Victor Sandal. I had cautioned her numerous times and explained the dangers of taking the job. Now it was her decision, and all I could do was wait and watch. When I returned home from work, I instantly saw that something was amiss. When I saw Sophia's look, I knew something was really wrong. My first response could only be, "You didn't do what you ought to do." "What the hell did you do?" Sophia answered. "Yes, I kept the job, but please let me explain before you start arguing and accusing me of something." "There's nothing to explain. It is no longer a doubt. You want to screw that damn womanizer." "Did you do that today?" Not a nice question for a wife who had gotten a new, better-paying job, but given the circumstances, what else could I say? Sophia became enraged and yelled, "What the hell do you think about me?" I yelled back, "I don't think a damn. But singing birds have whispered in my ear, and I happen to know for sure that screwing is included in that damn secret agreement between Patrick and you. Seems to be just what you're looking for because you've envied your divorced friends so much, and now you want to join them. You're mad. Totally mad." She hurried up to the bedroom. Sophia returned to the kitchen 2 hours later, asking if I had calmed down enough to hear what she had to say. Since I couldn't escape hearing such nonsense sooner or later, I said, "Go on." She informed me that Patrick had apologized for the falsified folder that had caused her so much bother and had offered her a month's additional pay as recompense. He had even boosted her new pay by 9% since the secretarial position he was now offering her required more credentials than the one she had been promised in the beginning. Patrick had informed her that during her first month on the job, she could resign with 2 days' notice and be paid for a full month plus a compensation month if she didn't like it. One of her first responsibilities would be to serve as Patrick's secretary on an 11-day business bus trip to Chile, where Patrick would sign a large export deal for specific equipment as well as a new import contract for high-quality wine. Of course, they'd have time for a safari and to see a few other well-known tourist spots. Sophia proceeded. Only that Chile trip, with flights in business class and the best hotels, is worth a fortune, much more than you and I could ever afford to spend. The extra compensation month and my new salary will be such a bargain for the whole family. And I have heard so much about Chile that I would have been stupid to turn it down. I can assure you that Patrick will not make any hidden demands of me, and that horrible phony folder must be the source of your suspicions about my adultery. You'll find out that you're paying a damn high price for that Chile trip. I told you. But it's not too late yet. Skip going there with that womanizer, and let's go there together, you and me. If we skip business class and skip five-star hotels, we can afford it some way if Chile is so important to you. I informed her in a last-ditch effort to rescue our marriage. She replied, "Sorry, but I can't do that because that trip is a part of my job. I'm sorry, but I have to do some traveling if I want to keep that well-paying job." The game was done now. I was certain that my wife had left the marriage and her family. It astonished and disgusted me to learn how cheap she had been. Victor Sandel's tiny payment using corporate funds may be considered peanuts in the context of Sandel Group's turnover. To prevent additional needless argument, I went for a stroll, which led me to a pizza with a bar in the basement. A merry band of 7 guys, co-workers, I suppose, sat there sipping beer and having a fine time. When one of them received a call on his mobile phone, he did not seem pleased when the connection ended and inquired whether I had any plans for the evening. He informed me that they were visiting our regional city to see the English actor John C., who had been completely wiped out by a divorce court in California and was now on his get money for my greedy ex-wife tour throughout Scandinavia. One of their party members had major reasons for not attending, which is why they had an additional ticket for the concert. I purchased it and attended the party for a great evening. Sophia was already asleep when I returned home, so I slept in the spare room and left to work early in the morning while she was still sleeping. Sophia attempted to argue when we returned home from work, but I just said, I had told you the truth, and that was all I had to say. Sophia resigned her job at the bank 1 week later, and her co-workers celebrated with a large party. No spouses were invited. That was okay with me. After barely a week in the Sandel Group's main office, she embarked on a business trip to Chile with Victor Sandel. I knew Sophia's final night at home before the trip would be the end of our time together as a pair. My acts that night were motivated by wrath and frustration, not kindness or love. Despite her normal hesitancy, Sophia deviated from her regular bounds that evening. The environment was tight and full of unsaid emotions as I behaved in ways I subsequently regretted terribly. Sophia glanced at me and inquired, "Are you happy now?" "No," I said honestly, plagued with regret and humiliation over how I had treated her. I couldn't escape the idea that I had let my fears take control, making me feel like I had betrayed both her and myself. The following morning, she went before I could wake up. Her only farewell was a letter on the kitchen table, which read, "I love you." Sophia's travel to Chile was an 18-hour night flight. Thus, her second night away from home was her first in Chile. I knew they'd be staying at Four Seasons Santiago for a few days, so I called the hotel at 3 a.m. and claimed I was Dr. Tobias Lindell from our regional medical center with an urgent call for the visitor, Mr. Victor Sandel. I was moved to his room. When Patrick answered the phone after numerous signals, I informed him I was Dr. Tobias Lindell from our regional medical center and had an urgent call for Mrs. Sophia Lundquist. I could tell Sophia had woken up from the ringing phone and was astonished when Patrick ordered her to take the phone since it was for her. After a few seconds, she picked up the phone, and a distressed voice stated Sophia Lundquist speaking. "Shameless 304. Why in the hell are you naked in that holy Victor Sandel's bed at 3 in the night? You cheating, we have already screwed him the first day there." I remarked to my astonished wife in a quiet voice so Patrick wouldn't hear me. Without a certain, my assumption about Sophia being nude was true. She sobbed. "No, Marcus. It is not what you think. It is innocent. You must believe me, and I can explain everything." Patrick realized that something was wrong, grabbed the phone, and yelled, "Go to hell." Now I was certain that what I had anticipated had occurred. Patrick wasted no time in savoring the delights he had paid for. Sophia contacted me the next day, extremely sorry, and attempted to explain that she only slept in Patrick's room for safety reasons since crime is so rampant in Chile. She even considered leaving her work and catching the next trip home. I responded, Please don't try to convince me that the safety at that five-star Hilton is so poor that you have to share a bed with such a piss and as that sandal. The damage is already done, so there's no need for you to come home. Stay there forever if you want. I don't miss you. Of course, I was saddened that my once happy marriage had devolved into such rubbish, but shit happens, and it was time to start thinking positively again. 2 days later, I met a doctor, a very lovely female gynecologist, and, of all places, we met in a supermarket. In reality, it was my daughter Nora who started chatting to a girl her age, and they were soon chuckling together. The girl's mother questioned Nora and her daughter. "Do you know each other?" Both females responded. "We are in the same class at school." Then I presented myself and Nora to the mother, who introduced herself as Helena Backstrom, Emily's mother and newcomer to town. Then she had an odd expression on her face and asked me, "I don't know if I dare to ask you, but I'm single and don't know whom to ask about a slight problem in my new house. Maybe you could be the right man to adjust the thermal heater? You'll get a cup of coffee and home-baked cookies." I responded with my best grin. Nora's friends are my friends. We can make it directly after the shopping. Helena's issue was minor, and I addressed it in a few minutes. During the subsequent coffee break, she informed me that she was a freshly divorced 35-year-old doctor at our local hospital. She had selected a position in our town because she had roots in a hamlet outside of town, and her elderly mother was in an old person's home nearby. "You'll get me as a new member of the single club soon too," she said, "because I filed for divorce earlier today. My soon-to-be ex thinks it will be a jolly good, exciting living." I explained. Helena shook her head and said, Our coffee break lasted almost 2 hours of nice conversation, while the girls spent the majority of the time playing in Emily's room. When I informed Nora it was time to go home, both girls proposed preparing and eating supper together. I glanced at Helena and replied that was okay with me. We could do it in my place if she agreed. She did. My son Felix joined us, and all 5 helped out in the kitchen. There was a lot of pleasure and laughter that evening. Later that evening, even though nothing had transpired between us, I couldn't stop thinking about Helena's sparkling eyes and charming smile as I tried to fall asleep. Sophia and I had no contact for the following 3 days, until one of my friends contacted me at work and recommended an intriguing website. It simply had one image, but what a picture. Victor Sandal, wearing only in a garter belt and stockings, stood against a billiard table, screwed by a large guy. The only text said Victor Sandal enjoys it. Without a question, it was a forgery, but the person who created it had to be one of the greatest Photoshop artists I'd ever seen. After a nice chuckle, the image was transferred to my new mobile phone and forwarded to Sophia's cell phone, along with a note. Sandal increasing his fame on the web. 50% chance that he, and then even you, will get AIDS. Even on a mobile phone's 3.5-inch screen, Victor Sandal was easily identifiable, but it was hard to determine whether or not the photograph was genuine. Hopefully the jerk had a good day after Sophia gave him that message. They responded later in the evening with 2 images from Sophia sent to my phone. The first image showed Sophia administering a BJ, presumably to Patrick, while the second was considerably more blatant. My instant response was a text message stating thanks for the pictures. Please send more of that kind to be included in our divorce documents. I'm sure your parents and friends will be proud of you for that new job you've got when they see what duties you're doing there. Sophia responded 1 hour later with a text that read, Please don't do that. Patrick took and sent these pictures without my knowledge. He regrets what he did. Something told me Sophia's vacation to Chile was not the joyous holiday she had hoped for. My phone call and texts had not made things better. My next message to her read, I doubt that. This is Patrick screwing a married woman without her knowledge. Don't forget, I've warned you about AIDS. Sophia's second message, 3 days later, was a photo of an unusually formed mountain. She even spoke with our children while she knew I wasn't home. My new friend Helena brightened my following day by asking me and my children to supper on Monday night. We had a fantastic time with the kids, and when they were exhausted, I suggested calling it a night. Helena offered to let my children and me spend the night in her spare bedroom. We adults could then have a nightcap and adult talk. Helena opened the bottle of wine I had brought with me and started discussing her marriage and divorce. It would be finalized in 4 months. Her ex received a second chance after his initial cheating incident, but it only lasted 4 months until he was discovered again. She missed him, and some of the perks of her current career and living situation were slipping away from him. A third opportunity was not an option for him. My essay was about Sophia being envious of her divorced friends and coworkers as they talk about their dates and new relationships. I went on to tell her about her new position and my attempts to prevent her from accepting it. It was even after she learned that her boss was talking about his bad intentions with the new secretary. Sophia had never cheated on me before to our vacation to Chile, as far as I knew. It was there that she was caught in her boss' bed on their first night together. Then I showed Helena the images I got from Sophia's phone and remarked that was the last straw on the camel's back. That's why I filed for divorce. In my case, even a second chance was out of the question. Then we discussed our futures. Helena said that she did not want to be a cheerful, divorced, man-hunting single, nor did she desire to live alone for the rest of her life. When I asked whether she was seeing anybody right now, she grinned and told me that I was her only male acquaintance in town outside of work. Then she asked whether we could continue seeing each other after Sophia returned. My response was that my major aim was to get Sophia out of the house, the sooner the better. And if she insisted to remain until the divorce was finalized, I would leave as quickly as possible. When it was my chance to discuss the future, I told her that I had no interest in one-night encounters, but that I imagined a beautiful lady wanting to spend her future with an ordinary person. A lady who wants an ordinary guy like me, along with my kids. Helena inquired, "How about her kids if that pretty woman has any?" "I'm sure everybody will see it as a good solution." "That would be fine, with slight giving, taking, and adjusting at the beginning. It works very well for many others," I added with a chuckle. Her next inquiry was, "Are you thinking about courting any of your wife's divorced friends? I'm sure you will get serious offers. Doesn't matter what they have said to your wife. They are out of the question. I will prefer someone who has felt the pain of having a cheating husband and wants to go on with her life together with a faithful man. I'm sure she will understand me much better than any of Sophia's friends." Helena's face lit up with satisfaction as I told her that. Helena served us brunch before we left for home. We were dining and listening to the local radio station when we heard about the explosion. It had caused significant damage to the villa owned by director Victor Sandal and his wife. I shouted, "Good Lord, that means problems." Helena was looking at me when she asked in a cold tone, "Do you know anything about that? If you want to see Emily and me any further times, please tell me the truth. Do you know anything about that? You need to know what I did yesterday evening and tonight." I can swear that I have no clue about Sandal's villa or Sandal's wrecked Maserati. I also have no idea who posted the sex image on the internet. I admit that I downloaded the sex photo from the internet, sent it to Sophia's cell phone, and warned her about AIDS. I'm sure someone prepared those fabricated party invites. For me, they were completely altered by an artist. It was probably paid for by some of my pals, but I vow to you that I have no idea who did what in these things. Without a doubt, Sandal must have many adversaries, some of whom are clearly strong and capable of carrying out well-planned activities. For example, the Maserati assault and the damage to the home seem to have been meticulously planned. I can assure you that I neither have the expertise to do so nor value Sandal as much as a single day in prison. I told her. She responded with a gentler voice. "I trust you, and just promise me that you will not do something dumb to your wife or Sandal when they return from Chile. They're not worth that." One of my pals was sentenced to 4 months in prison for assaulting his wife's employer after getting her intoxicated. I believe that such a monster as Sandal might have more severe implications, and as I already said, he is not worth a single day. My wife was well aware of what she was getting into, and the divorce will suffice for her, particularly if she discovers that the joyful single life she had hoped for would not be as fulfilling. This was my reply to Helena. My kids and I headed home for a few hours before going to Burger King with Helena and Emily, as the kids requested. The radio provided some further information regarding Victor Sandal's villa. The newscaster said that Mrs. Sandal was on her way home from Florence, while Mr. Sandal was in Chile on business. It was explained that no one was in the villa during the previously inexplicable explosion. The police vowed to provide further information as soon as they had anything relevant to discuss. The landline phone rang, and to my amazement, it was Sophia. She and I hadn't spoken since the day I discovered her in Patrick's bed. Now she yelled, "What the hell have you done with Patrick's house? Have you turned totally mad? You can tell your pimp that I don't give a shit about what happens to his damn house." I heard it on the radio, but as I said, I don't care a fuck. I informed my soon-to-be ex. She continued, "You are the main suspect, and I really hope you will rot in jail. Sorry to disappoint you, but I can hardly be a suspect at all." I have a very good alibi, as I was with company during the evening and night when the radio said it happened. I told you. Sophia then wanted to speak with our children. They informed her that we had spent the evening with Emily and her mother and remained the night at their place. Only 5 minutes after Sophia's call, 2 police officers knocked on my door, a guy, but not the famed TP, and a woman dressed in civilian clothing. They asked if they might come in and ask me some questions. I replied, sure, come in. They inquired whether I knew what had happened to Victor Sandals' home, and I said that all I knew was what I had heard on the radio. Then I told them, my soon-to-be ex-wife works for Sandal Group, and she is now in Chile with Victor Sandal. Sophia contacted me from Chile a few minutes earlier and accused me of being the primary suspect. She probably anticipated retaliation since I discovered her cheating on me with Sandal and filed for divorce. The female police officer inquired, how could you find that out so far from home? Very straightforward. I contacted Sandal's hotel room around 3 a.m. and told him I was a doctor who needed to speak with Mrs. Sophia Lundquist. She was in his bed, and Sandal handed her the phone. Both of my guests grinned at that comment. I proceeded, the children and I were invited to dine at our friend Helena Backstrom's place last evening. If you don't recognize her name, she is a new gynecologist at our local hospital. However, Helena and I had a bottle of wine as a nightcap while our children slept. That's why my kids and I remained there overnight. The female police officer said, I've seen her at the hospital. She seems to be a very good doctor. Later, at Burger King, I informed Helena about the police visit, and because I had nothing to conceal, I told her the truth. After dining, we went for a lengthy stroll in the park. Helena then informed me that her ex will be visiting her the next weekend. They have some issues resolved. Then she said that he had indicated he would try his best to receive a third opportunity. What can I say about that? Not much. Just you can call me if he is threatening to hit you or anything like that. Helena answered, thanks, but he is not that kind of man. Have you been thinking about giving Sophia a second chance if she promises to quit that job and be a faithful wife forever? No, I can't. Because she had several cautions before taking that job. She knew precisely what was about to happen. No rational guy would tolerate such humiliation as discovering his wife in her boss' bed on the first night of a work trip. And particularly not after the sex photos she sent me. It is up to her to decide what she will do after the vacation, but I am out. It doesn't matter what type of saint she is. She could be okay for someone else, but not for me. However, Sophia will always be the mother of my children, and I will never refuse her access to them, even if I am granted full custody, I said. Helena and I didn't see each other during the week since she worked the evening shift, but she used to phone me every evening for small chat, which made me extremely happy. When Sophia returned home, chaos ensued. She hadn't informed me when she'd be returning during our most recent conversation, during which she accused me of being the primary suspect in Victor Sandals' troubles. She spent the most of the evening with our children, and she and I didn't start conversing until the kids went to bed. First, Sophia attempted to give me a bottle of cheap blended whiskey from a tax-free store, saying it was a present from Patrick. She was not happy when I ordered her to return it to him and made it plain that I had no intention of taking it. Her attitude did not improve when I delivered her copies of the divorce papers. I also told her that the divorce would be completed within 7 months, whether or not she signed the paperwork. However, if she wanted a speedier procedure with better conditions, I recommended that she go to court and sign the forms. Then she asked, "Did you really send Patrick's disgusting pictures to my friends and relatives?" I said the truth. Not yet. I didn't want to make them puke. But I will do it if Victor Sandal or you cause me any more issues. Isn't that some kind of blackmailing? She questioned, weeping. Not at all. You could comprehend that by posting those photos, you effectively ended our marriage. I want to take my life to the next level, and you are free to join your divorced friends tomorrow and start the joyful single life you have always wanted. Of course, only if your pimp has no other plans for you. But for the time being, he may be preoccupied with his own concerns. Sophia was weeping and asking me, what has happened to Victor Sandal's house? I told her the truth. I don't know any information, and I don't give a damn about his home. The cops are aware that I am innocent of both his and your claims. You should know that you are not the only wife in that pimp stable, and most likely another husband loves more for his 304 wife than I do with my soon-to-be ex. She sobbed for a while before weeping. Dear Marcus, I wish I could turn back time. I really regret accepting that position despite all of your cautions. It was the stupidest mistake I have ever made. Can you forgive me if I leave my blasted job tomorrow morning? Please forgive me so that we may remain a family. How could you do that to me and our children? I questioned her. Sophia finally confessed. I was fed up with my employment at the bank when I discovered that Anna Lindgren, who had an affair with the boss, would get my projected promotion to the main office. Then I'd be advised to accept a transfer to a remote office or resign. I couldn't accept it. The Sandal Group's post for an exciting position piqued my attention, and I was hired after being introduced to the boss, Sandal, who wanted to meet with me. The only issue was that Victor Sandal expected a quickie once a month. But I thought, why not? Because sex with a highly attractive guy might really spice up our sex lives. My friends had always complimented their affairs, so I figured why not? Then you launched your campaign against my employment, and you even discovered my new attractive lingerie, which Patrick had purchased for and wanted me to wear during our sex sessions. You truly made me feel like a sack of junk. Then that awful folder made me feel humiliated and enraged. Then I made the decision to resign. But Patrick provided me with generous compensation, boosted my income to be much more than if I had received that promotion at the bank, and urged me to stay strong and maintain the job. Of course, the first-class Chile trip was a huge bonus that made me deaf to all of your arguments against Victor Sandal. It was what I considered outright slander. Of course, I was aware that he had occasional affairs. However, a discreet coupling once a month would be a little price to pay for all of my benefits in that employment. However, today I discovered the hard way that I was mistaken, and everything you mentioned was correct. When we arrived at our first hotel in Chile and realized we were sharing a room with a double bed, I got a strange sensation. My suspicions were validated when, after the bellhop departed, Patrick became dominating and dismissive of my sentiments. He behaved without concern for my comfort or well-being, and his demeanor during the trip was not what I had anticipated. That night, I found myself rethinking the whole voyage and regretting my decision to attend. I battled to sleep, and when your phone call woke us up, my emotions erupted. Patrick made snarky and rude comments about you, which exacerbated the tension. The following mornings followed a similar pattern, with Patrick in perfect command of the situation. He kept on to the passports and tickets, leaving me feeling alienated and helpless in a new place. When he viewed the image you supplied, he grew irritated, spent a lot of time phoning his attorneys, and eventually utilized the issue to gain more power. He emailed the image personally, without caring how much it would pain me if it was shared with my friends and family. You once labeled Patrick a manipulator, and you were correct. One day, after many hours of heated discussions with 3 directors of a firm that was acquiring equipment from Sandal Group, we signed a deal. To celebrate, we had lunch at a tiny hotel. After the lunch, Patrick surprised me by telling his companions that I was their signing bonus. He had arranged a hotel room for them and asked me to amuse them until 7 p.m. I hate to report that I survived their company under enormous strain. While they were unusually courteous and restrained, it was still an awful experience that I wish I could forget. Chile is a fascinating nation, and I regret not accepting your invitation to go there with you rather than Victor Sandal. Screwing that scum and losing a nice spouse and family was not worth business-class flights, 5-star hotels, or the additional money I'm making now. As a result, I keep begging you, please forgive me. Sophia's revelation astonished me since it was her own initiative and reflected the horrible guilt she must have been experiencing. I had not asked her for a confession. Then Sophia asked me, what are your plans for the future? The kids claim you are seeing a single mother. Is that serious? My primary priority is to finalize our divorce and divide our assets as quickly as feasible. I hope we can continue to communicate and collaborate on our children's issues. Yes, I've met a female buddy, but it's only the beginning. Do I know her? She inquired. No. You have not envied any of your divorced friends for a long time. However, I wouldn't be surprised if I had numerous serious proposals from them. You should be thrilled now that you may join them in their amazing pleasures, if your pimp permits it. I said. Then I proceeded. What disappoints me the most about you, Sophia, is how much of a cheap 304 you really are. You're a terrific steal for Sandal. His only actual cost to you as business 304 is the modest additional wage on top. He gets a terrific 304 for a full month for less than the cost of one night with an escort from the county capital. Sophia started to weep. The next Tuesday, Helena called me at work. She informed me that she and her ex had reached an agreement on what they still shared. There is no third chance for him. She asked me to her place that evening because she believed we should discuss. I was interested, so I asked her, please give a clue. Don't forget your toothbrush, she remarked with a giggle before hanging up. Sophia offered to stay home with the kids, so I went to Helena's alone, carrying 24 red flowers and a large box of chocolate. She thanked me with a scorching kiss, which gave me something to look forward to throughout the evening. She said that it was critical for her to know the whole truth about my role and what had occurred to Sandal. My genuine answer was this. I contacted Sandal's hotel room at 3 a.m. and accused Sophia, who was staying with him, of being disloyal. Then I emailed Sandal's incriminating picture to Sophia's cell phone. Aside from that, I am not accountable for anything else. However, I am confident that these activities were carried out by a group of people who were unlikely to be associated. I don't think the Maserati or the home damage has anything to do with Sophia or any other adulterous spouse. These crimes seem to have been professionally carried out, potentially as part of broader commercial transactions involving enormous sums of money. The picture of Sandal on the internet may have been shared by any of the unhappy spouses, perhaps prompted by the fake folder. Yes, several of my acquaintances were involved, but none have given any information with me about who did what with that folder. Helena accepted my explanation and decided to strive toward developing a meaningful relationship. We agreed to take our time and let things happen organically before moving in together. And if all goes well, get married soon after. Helena smiled warmly and shared her confidence that this technique would help us develop our friendship. She revealed that she had been thinking about me since her divorce and couldn't understand why her love for me had developed so swiftly. She said that the evening we spent together at my place cooking supper for all 5 of us was essential. You made me laugh and helped me forget about my difficulties, and I realized you were the kind of person I needed in my life. My sentiments became stronger with each chat we had after that. It may seem crazy, but I believe we were intended to be together. I said that I had been thinking about her since our first evening together and had lost interest in being a wild single. My buddies would tease me for falling in love with the first lady I met after skipping Sophia. I told Helena that her beautiful eyes and charming smile had made me wish for a miracle that would help me forget the humiliation my wife had caused me by submitting as a 304 to Victor Sandal. Helena and I both understood that a successful relationship required much more than just fantastic sex, as crucial as that was. To our great relief, we discovered that we had many same hobbies and perspectives. We even had a few completely different hobbies, such as Helena's strong passion in dance. When I informed her that I would never accompany her to witness such things, she just smiled and replied, "Well, see. That's why living together should be a pleasurable experience." I told myself that even a nice man should have limitations. Ballet is my thing. Sandal's wife said that she would not dare to reside in our community until Patrick resolved his issues. She loved staying in Florence with her beau. According to the allegations, Sandal began to assume her boyfriend was somehow engaged in his issues. When he revealed this to his wife, she promptly filed for divorce. Sophia returned from Chile and resolved not to have any more intercourse with Victor Sandal. When he wanted candidate after a few weeks back home, she informed him that they had agreed on one quickie every month, and he had already had it in advance for more than 2.5 years. He fired her. Sophia protested to her bank's union, which she was still a member of. Her union sued Sandal Group for a large sum, which resulted in a settlement of 2 years' pay for Sophia. I was happy for Sophia because she had regained her common sense and guts to get rid of that rodent Victor Sandal. Sophia now had her independence, and in 5 weeks she would be moving into her own 3-room apartment, living as a contented single lady with the freedom to attract and discard men as she saw fit. At the very least, her pals had persuaded her that they were perfectly content with their current lifestyle. I questioned it and was certain she would regret the whole situation in a short time, but that wasn't my concern. Helena and I are now most interested in having a joyful and busy family life with our children. We'd located the ideal home for our requirements. We'd be moving in within 4 months and planning a modest wedding after my divorce was finalized. Most individuals in our circumstances live together without being married for a few years, but Helena felt it was necessary to get married before moving in with a guy and a new family. And I had no problems to this. Our children were promised to accompany us on our honeymoon, a Mediterranean trip on a new massive ship they had seen on television. They wanted us to get married as soon as possible. Helena started hinting to me that she wanted more than just a wedding. She wanted to join the baby boom with many nurses at the hospital where she worked. Thank you for watching. If you loved this bizarre tale of betrayal, retribution, and redemption, please like and subscribe for more. Is Sophia's remorse genuine, or is it just too little, too late? Please let us know in the comments.